Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
In that the debate now in this country and indeed right across Europe is not about what we do with terrorists, because I don't think anybody is going to weep for the men who died in France this morning. Weep for the priest, of course, not for the killers or the killer. The conversation will become about how we punish people who had absolutely nothing to do with it. You know, I wish I'd just even had in the back of my mind the vaguest possibility that I was wrong about that. I really do. No, don't be silly, James. Of course we're not going to have a debate about people who had nothing to do with this attack. Yeah, we are. We're having a debate at the moment about the situation in Germany caused by Angela Merkel's 1.5 million refugee invitation, even though all of the crimes committed in Germany over the last week, none of them were committed by people that arrived in that tranche of refugees. It's almost inevitable, given that 1.5 million people will reflect humanity, that there will be crimes committed by some of those people, but they will then become another argument about whether all 1.5 million should somehow be held responsible for those crimes. And that is where we are. I don't know how you get back from that now. I really don't. But I would remind you, vainly though it almost certainly is, that priest whose parish would have spent his life preaching Jesus' doctrine on terrorism, which is turn the other cheek. Not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And certainly not, well, anybody's eye if they come from the same background as the people responsible for the crime. Grim, grim times. More details as and when they emerge, I promise you. 6 minutes after 11 is the time. And these two stories aren't linked in any way, shape or form, but you can't help feeling that they sort of play into the same grim narrative at the moment. Schools may be forced to record incidents of hate crime under a crackdown unveiled by the government today. She's moved quite quickly on this one, the new Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, and it is in response to a surge in reported xenophobic and racist abuse. Obviously, you've heard on this programme some pretty egregious examples of what that xenophobic and racist abuse might be. I can't believe in the 21st century that we need to clarify this, but apparently we do. When I was at school, if I got called a Paddy or a Mick, it was genuinely done with affection, in the same way that a Welsh bloke would be called Taffy or a Scottish bloke would be called Jock. The idea that that is in any way comparable to Polish children in the playgrounds of the only school they've ever been to, in a country, the only country they've ever lived in, children of Polish parents being told that they now somehow have to go home as a result of the referendum results. We've heard that on this programme. The idea that that is the same as me being called Paddy when I was young is about as close to offensive as ignorance is capable of becoming. We are talking here about incidents assessed as hate crimes by authorities, from school authorities right through to the HM Inspectorate of Constabulary. And they, of course, reserve the right to turn around and say, actually, what you've just reported to me, I'm very sorry you're so upset by it, but it's not anti-Semitic or homophobic or racist or anti-Muslim or in any other way construable as a hate crime. Unfortunately, there are now hundreds of them happening. 6,000 alleged hate crimes reported to police in England, Wales and Northern Ireland in the 4 weeks from the middle of last month. Again, I can't believe I need to say it out loud, but I do. The idea that everybody who voted to leave the European Union is in any way racist or indeed supportive of these sort of hate crimes is absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. And offensive as well. But the result has emboldened a section of society who, possibly through a lack of intelligence, think that a vote to leave the European Union was in some way an endorsement of the notion that people from the European Union have to leave Britain. And that has added to an air of menace in the country. A genuine air of menace. And it's reached schools. And the challenge now is what should happen in a school. I mean, tick all the boxes of somebody who rails against racism on an almost daily basis. But I don't know that the police should be getting involved in schools. The way it stands at the moment, schools can deal with allegations of hate crime internally as a disciplinary matter. They have the option to refer an incident to police, but there's no mandatory or mandatory requirement to do so, or indeed to record incidents. And I can't help wondering whether that system actually works. My children have never been victims of racism at school, and given that they're white, and albeit that they have Irish surnames, it's highly unlikely they ever will be. But one of them has encountered it. One of them has encountered it on the part of one of her young friends, and I can say with my hand on my heart, the school dealt with it fantastically well. Maybe that's coloured my view. And actually, if we'd come across this in our lives and the school hadn't dealt with it fantastically well, we would recognise the Home Secretary's belief or suggestion that maybe we need more. We need more in schools. What happens in school? Racism in a school playground. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And I'm going to be a bit strict on this. I think I am. Or am I? Do we need to limit this to experiences that you've had since the referendum? Because that is, I think, the scenario against which Amber Rudd is suggesting the system needs to be changed. Well, I don't think that it categorically is. It's since June the 23rd that these offences have escalated. The Home Secretary said it was completely unacceptable for people to suffer abuse or attacks because of their nationality or ethnic background. And the sort of abuse we're talking about is usually violence against the person, but also includes harassment, common assault, as well as verbal abuse, spitting and barging. So what should happen in schools? What should happen in schools with these sort of scenarios? And we can only really begin this conversation with you telling me what's happened in your school or in your child's school. 10 minutes after 11 is the time. Here you go, just in case, because I know sometimes you send me the odd email suggesting I might exaggerate when I tell you the things that I have to repeat a million times because some people have got potatoes growing in their ears. Here's someone called Charlie. Next on LBC, James tells you how racist you and your kids are for voting to leave the EU. And that is within seconds of me stating how offensive and wrong it would be in any way to suggest that everybody who voted to leave the European Union in any way is responsible for, endorses or approves of the crimes that are now being reported. So there you go, proof positive that even if I say it a gazillion times, some people are still determined not to hear. And there's nothing you can do about that. It's a sort of Donald Trump effect through the lens of Great Britain at the moment. 11:11 is the time. Two predictions I've made lately, which are horribly coming true. The first linked to terrorism, suggesting that the debate now is not about what we should do with the people who do us harm, but what we should do with the people who don't. How we should punish lots and lots of innocent people for the actions of a tiny minority. Why 1.5 million refugees in Germany are somehow to be held responsible for crimes committed by precisely no refugees brought in during that policy of Angela Merkel's, and I can see that prediction is coming true. The other one that I've made recently is that racism will become more emboldened, not just in the behaviour and the reports of these sort of incidents, but people will now, and you might already have encountered it on social media, yeah, all right, I am a bit racist, so what? That's the next stage in this cycle of hatred, I guess you'd have to call it. Oh yeah, all right, I am. I am against all of them. I do think they are all wrong-uns, which is the definition of racial or religious prejudice. And that's where we're going next. Hold on to your hats for that, because it won't be pretty. It really won't. And if it's happening in playgrounds, it would suggest that future generations are already struggling with the legacy of modern hatred. What should happen in a school? I honestly don't know. In a primary school, the idea of the police getting involved just seems wrong to me. Doesn't it? Or does it? I don't know. I'm a middle-class white bloke. I've got no idea what it's like to be a victim of racism. If it was my 10-year-old who was being abused for the colour of her skin or the country of her dad's birth, maybe I would feel differently. Maybe I'd feel it was perfectly acceptable for her classmates to get a massive rocket and a big scare from the police. So, have your children reported a difference in the way they're being treated since that referendum result came in? It's 13 minutes after 11. I've got a completely clear switchboard. My apologies if you were waiting to talk to us about negative interest rates, but I want to move in on this. And I wasn't going to, because we've got the chief executive of the Anne Frank Trust coming in at the end of the week, and I thought we'd wait to have a conversation with him about these sort of matters, but I didn't know this story would be published today. I didn't know these numbers would be released today. 6,000 alleged hate crimes. What? No, actually, let's not limit it to post-referendum situations. Let's limit it to racism and children. I want you to tell me about the time you realised your child had been a victim of would we call it a race crime? Or just a victim of racism from another child? 0345 6060 973. Tell me what happened, and then tell me what you think the authorities should have done and indeed did do. So you're talking about your child perhaps recently been told that they need to go home. We saw their laminated cards, didn't we, at that primary school in Cambridgeshire, telling Polish vermin to go home. There was graffiti on a wall aimed at one young girl, telling her that she had to go home now, even though she was born here. Get out of our country. We want our country back, somehow translating into get rid of these people, get these people out. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. What happened when your children came face to face with, I don't want to say racist children. I don't know why, but I don't think a child can be racist. It's learned behaviour. But then you'd say the same about an adult. What should the school do? What can the school do? Would you ever get the police involved in child-on-child racism? 0345 6060 973. And what's it like, as a parent, to know that your child is waking up to the fact no one is born like this, but somewhere in school they've woken up to the fact that they're now being looked at differently because of their ethnicity, their birth or their background. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. That's really what I want from you. Do you know, I've said this to you a few times lately, I hope the phones don't ring. I really hope the tide goes back out again on this, and that this post-Brexit surge, hand on heart, I believe it will go back down again. I really do. I just think it's really stupid people who've completely misunderstood what that vote meant, who felt emboldened by it in some way and are now doing things they never would have dreamed of doing prior to the result, but they'll realise it is unacceptable. That's what I hope, and it's what I believe. But when I read some of my texts and emails talking about political correctness in the context of a conversation about racism, I get a little bit worried, because for people like that, when they say, oh, it's political correctness gone mad, what they mean is, well, it's outrageous that my kids aren't allowed to be racist to other kids in a playground. It's not politically correct to be opposed to hatred. It's not politically correct to suggest that children shouldn't be insulting each other based upon their skin colour or the circumstances of their birth. It's not a political issue, it's a humanitarian one, a deeply humanitarian one. But there you go. I mean, you think I exaggerate sometimes. I know you do. Here you go. Even a worm turns, Mr. O'Brien, after years of bullying by an oppressive PC-driven government. So we'll address that issue as well. Is it now the case that we all recognise people like that complaining about political correctness when I've started a conversation about children being victims of racist abuse actually want to normalise racist abuse? If you're one of these people who tells me, oh, it's political correctness gone mad, I'm talking to you about children being racially abused. There is no but or if there. You say children are being racially abused. You don't say, well, yeah, but what you've got to remember is political correctness. That just means you're saying racism's fine. And that is where we're going next. I honestly believe that. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think I am. Crack down on hate crime in the playground is the headline, and you would imagine, wouldn't you, that no one would find that troublesome or problematic, the idea that we would crack down on hate crime, but some people do. They provide it as evidence of political correctness. Man alive, what are we becoming? It's politically correct to complain about children being racially abused. Oh yeah, you can't say what you want anymore. I want to tell a little kid that they're a dirty foreigner and need to go back to Pakistan at the first opportunity. I should be free to do so. Political correctness. Political correctness gone mad. 21 minutes after 11 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. And again, I'll read you this text from someone called Julian. Only you could preach about racism while a terror attack is happening in France. What on earth have children being abused in British playgrounds got to do with murderers in France? Answer, oh, well, they're all brown. And you, mate, think I'm a disgrace. Honestly, don't forget also that priest would have spent his entire life, Julian, preaching that you should turn the other cheek when confronted with violence. That priest would have done that. You're perfectly entitled to laugh at his beliefs that he's died for now, it would appear. You're perfectly entitled to do that. But I guess that puts you on a slightly different side of this debate than the priest. 21 minutes after 11 is the time. What happens? And I'm fascinated to know, when does racism become the fault of the individual rather than the fault of the person that taught them? Can you even put an age on it? Is it? Can you be a racist 8-year-old when you're just parroting everything that your dad says at home? You can be a racist 18-year-old, but again, I guess the point in which our minds become our own, rather than simply vessels into which others have poured things. Layla's in Woolwich. Layla, what would you like to say?
Thank you for taking my call,
You're very welcome.
James. And can I just say my condolences to the French community that was affected just now?
Of course you can.
And the priest and his family. It's very sad, and yet again we're going through this, and there's no end in sight, I suppose.
Well,
there's lunatics everywhere.
Indeed.
Well, the first time I come across this with my daughter, she's 15 now. She's just going to do her GCSEs next year, and she was in first year foundation in primary, and she came to me when she came out of the classroom, and she said, "Mummy, that little boy over there told me that his mum and dad don't like us." And I said, "What do you mean? What did I do?" And she said, he said, and he's in the same class as her. Well, they were sitting down together at lunchtime, and he goes, "Why are you so dark, and why do you wear what you wear?" And she wears hijab, and she's been wearing it herself all that time. And I said to her, "Don't worry about that. I mean, he's only asking you a question." And she said, "Well, why doesn't she like us? Doesn't she say good morning to you when you're dropping us off?" And I said, "I suppose so, she does. And there's nothing wrong with someone not liking you for what you've done to them, but for no reason at all, that's very strange." And she said, "Can I still be friends with him?" And I said, "Yes, go ahead."
So he said, "My mum doesn't like people like you."
Yeah, she doesn't. She's always saying bad things about you at home, and that she doesn't like your mum, and she doesn't like how she's dressing, and we don't like you. We just don't like black people. And she calls them the N-word at home. And I'm shocked.
Black and Muslim. So you've really ticked the boxes there.
Yeah. Well, the woman always says hello to me, and I never thought she had this inside her heart.
That's political correctness.
Yeah,
that's what people like that mean. And politically correct, I've got to say hello to her. I've got to be polite to her. I can't say to her what I say about her behind her back.
Yeah, I'd rather she was absolutely clear with me, so I knew where I stood. I mean, I actually respect people who tell me to my face that they don't like my religion or they don't like my colour. I can't help that they don't like me, but I'd rather know how they feel so I can stay away from them. This woman used to talk to me, "How are you? How are the kids?" Just really nice. I never knew she felt like this until her child so innocently told my daughter, "My dad and my mum do not like you, nor what you wear, nor your religion."
Did your daughter process?
No, I never said anything until it escalated to the fact that he started pulling her hijab at school because his mum told him to stay away from my daughter. Because of that, the time period, it came up to Ramadan, and the school was talking about Diwali, Christmas, Ramadan, all the different faiths that are in the school. And it came to a time when Ramadan was the subject, and she just blurted out outside next to me, "Oh, why would you have to learn about Ramadan? That's not part of British culture." And I never knew until then that she was so adamant in her belief that she really didn't like me. And I turned to her and I said, "I learned about Christianity and Judaism and Hinduism and Diwali and all the religions. They're just, comparative religions. Children study them because of the world they live in. I mean, we can't be ignorant about other cultures and other religions. So don't think he's been forced to do this, because my daughter has to learn Christianity and."
What did the school do? Did you report anything to the school?
I did.
And what happened? This is going back a couple of years, is it?
15 and she was like 5 then, and I said to the head teacher, I've come across this incident, and this is what he said to my daughter. Children are children. They talk to each other. They're innocent. They'll blurt everything out that they've heard at home, and nothing against him. But this woman now is verbally sort of voicing these kind of views outside in the school premises and next to me. And what do you think I should do? What's your advice as the head teacher of the school? So you're responsible for the well-being of my child. What do you think? How should I approach her? And the head teacher was totally nonchalant. She said, "Oh, we don't get involved in parents and what they do to each other, as long as it doesn't affect the students." I said, "But it is affecting the students. It's affecting my daughter. Her hijab is being pulled."
If she was, and yes, and that sounds like bullying, and indeed it appears to be religiously motivated. But
exactly.
I wouldn't want the police turning up at a primary school.
No. I wanted help from her immediately, the head teacher. I wanted the school to do something. Maybe educate the parents. Maybe. No one is indoctrinating your child. We're just teaching them, giving them facts, knowledge. That's what the school institutions are for, to give knowledge to children and to empower them to talk to each other, to get to know each other. But the woman was...
And that's where the people objecting to Ramadan being taught don't realise the sort of vicious circle that they're caught up in. I don't want my children to be less ignorant than me. I don't want my children to be less ignorant and hate-filled than I am. I don't want them being taught about stuff that they don't need to be frightened of, because I want them to be frightened of it. Strange times that we live in. 27 minutes after 11 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Is there a definition of political correctness that is a little more charitable, perhaps, than the one that I'm using this hour? The notion that I can start introducing a subject about children being exposed to hate crime at school, and some people complain that it's politically correct. Because the only analysis I've got now is that you think it's wrong to stop children being racially abused at school. It's politically correct to stop people racially abusing each other. And I've suspected for some time that's what people who routinely employ the meaningless phrase political correctness actually hold in their hearts. But I've always hoped on a fairly profound level that I was horribly wrong about it. What on earth does it mean? Seriously, what is it that people aren't allowed to say because of political correctness that now they feel they are allowed to say? Because all we're getting is reports of racial hatred. All these years when we thought that perfectly decent people saying, oh, you know, it's political correctness gone mad. All these years, people have been saying that, and you've sort of been going, yeah, all right, maybe you mean something other than, I really resent the fact that I get frowned at for being racist these days. I really resent the fact that I can't say what I really think about Pakistanis. I really resent the fact that I can't insult all black people or all Jews or all Muslims. I really flipping hate that. It's really wrong. I really hate it. And then you get your newspaper columnists and your politicians doing it as well. It's politically correct. What the hell does it mean? What does it actually mean? Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means people, on a day like today, as we absorb the news of the murder of a priest in France, it means people really hate the fact that they're not allowed to say 6 billion people around the world are all complicit in that crime instead of the 2 people who've committed it. They want to be able to take a brush and paint everybody with the culpability of a crime, whether they've committed it or not. And we now in Britain are letting them. We just are. It's almost like we've given up. The way the debates unfold, the way people are achieving prominence, the way political correctness is cast as some unalienable evil, even though nobody can actually tell me what it means. And you open your newspaper and you read about children in playgrounds being abused. You read about Layla, or you hear Layla's story of her little girl effectively being told by a classmate in kindergarten that my mum doesn't like people like you. That is the opposite of political correctness. So are we all happy now? My mum doesn't like people like you. Why not? You're black. She doesn't like blacks. Oh, okay. God, what a brave new dawn. Thank God we've got rid of political correctness. The number you need remains 0345 6060 973. I have a couple of soft spots, if you like, in my normally quite grumpy worldview. As I've told you a million times in the past, I think Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, is an epic force for good in this country. He's chipping into the conversation we had in the first hour about negative interest rates. Do look up what he's got to say about that if you can. And the other chap, I believe, is truly remarkable, inspirational in the public eyes. It's people from roughly my own generation, is Jamie Oliver, who I'm delighted to say dropped by the studio earlier today. I'll give you a little taster of some of the things we were talking about, and then you can hear the full interview in about 10 minutes' time.
And I know, I mean, I have some amazing fans, and also I annoy people. People listening to this will probably hate me, and they've hated me for 20 years, and I haven't gone away.
Does that ever bother you? I mean, you're laughing now, but no one's quite that thick-skinned.
I don't mind people hating me or finding me annoying, but at some point, hopefully, if they had a choice between me and other people, they'd probably trust me to babysit their kids, because they might think I'm consistent.
25 minutes to 12 is the time. More on that to come. Back to the question of race hate in schools, and we're not really going to have time to explore my side issue of political correctness. How can you have a radio presenter talking about children being racially abused in a playground being responded to by people complaining about political correctness? Answer, that's just where we are now in Britain in 2016. 11:35. Simon's in Manchester. Simon, what would you like to say?
Hey, I was just going to say, it's not a brand new phenomenon, and it's not set
for
between
sure.
Perfect. It isn't certain races that do it. I was born in Moss Side in Manchester, and I went to a primary school, and I got bullied weekly. I got into fights weekly. In the end, my parents ended up taking me out, and it was all racially motivated. And that was in 1988.
Would you have wanted police to be involved?
Eventually, yeah, because it got to the point where my nose got broke. And obviously...
Well, that I mean, that's an assault. That is a crime. I suppose we were talking more about the verbal abuse or the...
Well, it started verbally and it ended up being physically, and it was once a week, and the teachers didn't do anything. The headmaster pretty much shrugged it off because I was white, really.
Sure.
And back then, especially on my side at the time, you couldn't really stick up for white people against people of African origin.
And had these people been your friends previously?
No. I mean,
Well, even at the age of 4 and 5?
No, because I actually went into this school at the age of 7. I went to... I ended up... I went to...
Why didn't you go to the police? If they broke your nose, Simon...
No, well, eventually, as soon as my nose got broke, that's when we actually went to the police. And the police, again, did nothing about it. So my parents ended up...
You got your nose broken and the police didn't do anything about it? That's disgusting.
They didn't do anything. I got took out of that school, which was a non-secular school. And I got moved into a Roman Catholic school, and I went and got baptised and everything else so I could convert to this school.
Right.
And that was in 1988, and that's a white lad
Getting racist abuse off black lads
being racially abused in
Moss Side. Well, I'm glad you got out of it, I suppose, but I find it astonishing. You could have had your nose broken by other children, gone to the police, and them not having taken any interest in it. I suppose if there's any silver lining at all, it would be that we have presumably moved to a place where if a kid got his nose broken by another kid, the police would get involved. I presume, although I guess we'd have to find out whether or not that's true. 0345 606 0973 is the number you need if you can help. Syra is in Buckinghamshire. Syra, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. You echo so many sentiments in our own home, so it's really lovely listening to you most of the time, in fact, all the time. It's just really scary waking up to the news every morning. There's always something going on, and it's just heartbreaking. So my heart does go out to the people in France at the moment, but I think the issue that you're talking about in terms of children being abused in school, I'm not sure that it is worth getting the police involved.
If you got your nose broken, it is.
Yeah, it probably does come down to how sort of violent the abuse is turning, but it would probably start off as verbal abuse, as you said. And I think it comes down to where that's coming from. So if the children are picking up this behaviour from home, which is quite likely, I think your text that you read earlier on, I can't remember the lady's name, but that just summed it up.
What point does it become my responsibility, though? Imagine I had racist parents and I repeated all the stuff they said to me when I was at school, and I saw that it hurt people, and because I wasn't very nice, I decided to say it even more, because I quite like that sense of power I get by hurting people, by seeing their pain. And at some point, it's not enough to say, oh, I'm just repeating what I've heard at home. Where is that point?
Oh, that's a very good question.
It really is, isn't it? And I'm not patting myself on the back. It's a question I've heard other people ask. I'm just repeating it. Where is that point?
It is a good question, but the thing is, a lot of it does come down to your grounding, doesn't it? And if you're not getting that grounding at home, then I think the way to tackle that is to address the parents. And I'm not sure how you would go about doing that. So say, for example, the grounding, you can't really do anything about it. And your question being, at what point would you then say that the responsibility lies with the individual? There has to be an age factor in this, but it's
not age, because every 9-year-old is different. Some 10-year-olds are more mature than some 44-year-olds.
Yeah, no, I was coming on to say that there is an element of maturity as well. So you would be dealing with it at an individual level. But once again, how would you go about dealing with it? Because you can't necessarily change that individual if, once again, what they're surrounded by is actually, this is normal. It's okay for us.
And it's not enough just at home now. You can find it in your newspapers. You can find it on your TV screens and your radio. So how do you teach a child that it's wrong to say, oh, all Muslims are awful, if people in the mainstream are saying it and being paid for the privilege? 20 minutes to 12 is the time. That Jamie Oliver interview on the way. I'm just going to squeeze in Barry before that. Barry is in Norwood. Barry, what would you like to say?
Hi there. I'm on. Do you know what? You just made my point for me, exactly.
Oh, sorry.
The tacit approval that's been allowed in the media. For the past 17 years, we've got media commentators unfortunately, on your own station, and I know you hate it. I know you personally hate it. I hear it voice whenever you say it. You have these media commentators who are allowed to be bilious, and biliousness is okay now. We're allowed to be hateful, and that hate builds into crescendo. My son got it the other day, and I told you about it when he got egged. Previously, we did it at school, right? He's had children be racist, and I've reported it, he's reported it, and it's just, oh no, we're not getting involved. But
what's the Home Secretary going to do then? What do you think Amber Rudd should do to address it?
You know what? We have to unfortunately get police involved. We should take it more seriously. We can't accept.
Can't have police in a primary school, can you?
We don't want it. We don't want it. But if the head teacher's not going to do something about it, what can you do to change the culture in the school? You can't.
But what can you do to change the culture of a child if they're going home and being told that they haven't done anything wrong?
Unfortunately, I think it's incumbent on the media as a starting point.
Mate, don't hold your breath. You're always gonna sell more tickets for the ghost train than you do for the Speak Your Weight machine. And I'm here to tell you that you currently weigh 14.5 stone, Barry. It's 11:42.